Hello and welcome to this tutorial where I will show you how to make a 2D endless platformer as the one you see here, where you will have a counter in the top and you will have some enemies and your player that can move up and down, and when you hit an enemy you will have a game over panel and you can hit try again. Yeah, let's get to it. So what you will be needing for this tutorial will be an icon for your player, an icon for the particle effects, and an icon for the enemy or obstacles, and then you need an image for your background. It's simply sprite images, and remember the background has to be a repeatable image, so like a completely white background or something, so it can repeat over and over and over. So now let's first create the material for the background. So create new material, call this background material, change this to unlit lit, let's see, this one, and drag your background on that one. So now we have the material. Let's create an empty object and call this the controller. Drag your main camera underneath the controller. Underneath the controller we will need to have a 2D sprite, and this one will be the player. Now drag the player icon here. As well, underneath the controller we will need a 3D quad, and this one will be the background, the repeat background. And this is why we need a material, because then you can drag the material to here, and let's scale it up 10. Let me drag it here like this, and we of course need to be much bigger. Let's make 100 by 100 like this. Let's take 200. Yeah, let's make it 200 in my case. And then on your player you will need a rigid body 2D. Remember to freeze the rotation in Z. Then you will need a box collider 2D. Let's zoom in here and let's adjust the box collider. It already is in the correct size. And then we will need a spawn point. So create empty and call this spawn point. And this is where the obstacles will spawn. So let's put that on the controller as well. And then we will need borders. So let's make empty again. Let's you need to create it underneath the controller and make 0, 0, 0. And let's call this border parent. And in here we will create 3 borders. And the first one we need a box collider here. Let's drag it up. Let's scale it out here. And this is where your player can move to from the top. Like this. So this will be the top border. Maybe it's easier just to copy this one, move it to the bottom here. And this will be the bottom border. And the last one will be, you probably guessed it already, or it's hard to see here, like this. And move it back a bit. So when the obstacles hit this one, they will disappear or die. So let's call it back border. And let's scale it up a bit like this. Good. And the last thing that we will need in here will be the particle system. We will just create it and then I will get back to it later. So let's just create one and move it here. Yeah. Now let's create the canvas. So say UI canvas, and the canvas will screen space overlay. We will say scale with screen size. Let's say 1920, 1080, 0.5. We will need a UI text. This will be, and remember your main camera to make the positions to -1 so it can be seen over here, and then you need to scale it up in my case, and let's move the camera so it fits inside. Sorry, so it fits in here like this. Could make it a bit bigger. Let me see here. Let's do something like this. Move it up here so the border will be here to the back. Then the background, I will scale it up a bit like this, and move the camera a little bit back again like this. Yes, now to the canvas again. Let's take the text and make it black. Move it to the top, and this one will be the score text. And in get-go, just a 0. Let's make it bold, and let's make it like 40 or something. Then we will need to panel. Let's create to the UI panel, and this one we will call exit. Let's scale it down so it fits. If you hold down the Alt key, it will adjust in all sides. Let's make it like something like this. Let's make it a bit darker. Underneath this one, we will have a UI text, and this one we will say game over. Move it up here. Let's take the panel and bump up the transparency like this, and then we'll need to create a UI button, and this button will be named reset level, and in text we'll just say try again like this. And maybe let's make this button a bit bigger like this, and you can always adjust it so it fits your game. Yeah. And this empty game I made, it was not for nothing, so for that. The score text, the exit background here, and we of course need, yeah, it's fine. So that's everything for the setup here. Now let's create the script for controlling all these things that we have. Create a C# script and let's call it game controller. Take your controller, add the game controller to it. Sorry, like this, and open it up in Visual Studio. So when it's open here in Visual Studio, you will need a couple of references, and I am making headers for all of them, so it's more clear for you to see what the different things are used for. So let's start with header, and this will be for this the score manager. And in here we will need a public text. Remember to implement using TM-Pro, like this. Public text mesh pro, and this one will be the score text. And then we will need a private float for the score. For the next one we will need, let's copy paste the header. And for this we will need the game over panel. And for the game over panel we will need a public game object, and this will be the game over panel. Then we have the looping background. Looping background. And for that we will need a public float called background speed and a public renderer for the background render. And then we need a header for our game speed, and there we'll need a float for our game speed. And the last one we will need is to control our player. So for our player we will need a public game object, and this will be the player. And we will need a public float to control the speed of our player. We need a private rigid body 2D, and this is to controlling the character. Let's call it rigid body. And lastly we will need a private vector 2, and this will be for direction. So this is everything that you need, and again the header is just so you can see what it's used for, and it is very helpful in the inspector here in a second. So to begin with we need a reference to our player, or to our rigid body, sorry. So our rigid body is equal to our player.getComponent. What component do we need to find? We will find our rigid body 2D. And again, to make it more clear for you, I'm using headlines for this. And we will start with the score manager. And for the score manager, we'll need to say if our game object dot find game object with tag, and here we'll need to find our player. We have not tagged him yet, we will do that in a second. So if our player isn't null, so if he is in the game, then score plus equal 1 times time.delta time. And our score text is equal to we will cast this as an integer, and it will be the score dot toString. That's what we need to add a score for each frame that the player is alive. Then for the game over panel, we will have to say, we can copy the same up here. So if your player is in the game, then game over panel dot set active to true. Oh, sorry. And here we of course need to say is null. So if he is dead, he's not in the game, then this panel will get true. So for looping the background, here looping background, we will have to say our background render dot material dot main texture offset is plus equal new vector 2, and here we will need our background background speed times time dot delta time and 0f. So this will loop the background all the time. So for the next one we will need that's the game speed. So let's say game speed, and here we will say transform dot position plus equal our new vector 3, and this will be our game speed multiplied with time dot delta time and 0 0 on the other axis. And then for our player, to get him to move, we need to say if our player isn't null. Oh, sorry, I made wrong. Oh, what's happening here? Wrong parentheses. Like we need these and this instead. Yeah. Oh, and then I need this one back. So if player isn't null, then we'll have to say float direction is equal to input dot get axis raw, and here we will need the vertical axis, and our direction is equal to new vector 2 and 0 on x-axis and direction on the y. Oh, sorry. Dot normalized. And here we'll need our rigid body dot velocity is equal to a new vector 2, and again here 0 on the x-axis and direction dot y times speed. Oh, sorry, we need the uppercase one here. Direction dot y times speed. Yeah. So let's see what's going on here. Just a second. So yeah, I was missing a end mark here. So the last function that we will need to implement will be our public void restart game, and here we'll need our scene. Yeah, we of course need to implement that up here. Let's say using come on, Unity engine dot scene management. That's what we need. And then we need scene manager dot load scene, and we will load what scene. We will say scene manager dot get active scene dot name. So this will restart the scene. So let's save the script and hit back Unity. And when it's done compiling on your controller, you can see here, this is why I made all the headlines, so you can see what are the different things for. So first, the score manager, we need the score text. We have that here. The game over panel, that is the exit we have here. Looping background, we need to add our background. The background. We need our background speed. Let's set it to 10. And then we need our game speed. Let's set it to 5. And then we have our player. Let's drag our player here, and our player speed, let's set it to 5. So next thing that we of course need to do is to take your player and tag your player. So now when you hit play, the game should run, and you can see the timer is going up, and your player can move up and down all the time, and the map is endless. So now let's get some enemy spawning. So on your spawn point here, let's create a new C# script and call this spawn enemy. Take your spawn point and add the spawn enemy script to it, because it will not be found. Just a second, why does it say that? Just a second. So I just closed the program, open it again, and now it works. So add the spawn enemy, and let's open it up in Visual Studio. And in here we will need a public game object, game object, and this will be a reference to our prefab. We'll need a public float, and here we'll need a maximum x value, we'll need a minimum x value, we will need a maximum y and a minimum y. Then we'll need a float for our time between spawn, so how often should they spawn, and then we need a private flow for our spawn time. In the start function we don't need anything. In the, let's make a new void here, and this one will be spawn, and in spawn we will have to say float random x is equal to random.range, and what range should it be? Random in minimum x and in maximum x. So it will spawn in between these two values. And you guessed it right, we need to do the same for random y. Let's random.range, and here we need the minimum y and the maximum y, like this. And then we need to say we instantiate our prefab, and we will instantiate it at transform.position plus new vector 3, and that will be between our random x and our random y, and 0 in the last axis, and then it will be rotation, like this. Yeah, then in our update we will say if time.time is less than our spawn time, then we need to spawn, and then we will set our spawn time back to time.time plus the time between spawn, like this. So let's save this and head back to Unity, and when you're back and it has compiled, let's take your obstacle here, or your enemy, and drag it into the game. Let's make the ordinate layer a bit up. Let's put it up here. Let's set it to 0, And I will make this enemy a little bigger. Ah, that's too big. Let's make it like this. And now we need to figure out where are the maximum and minimum x, y. So the first one that we will need is in the top. So how far can it go? It can go here. So our minimum y will be, let's say, 47, like this. And on the spawn point we will have a minimum y. Take the obstacle again, go down to the bottom. Our sorry, I mixed it around. Our minimum will of course be minus 44, like this, and our maximum will be 47. Let's do the same for the x. So it can spawn around here, minus 155, like this. That is our maximum, and I would in my game say that the minimum should be something like here, so I have a chance to to avoid it in my case. So this number, so take spawn point, and that is our minimum. Now the obstacle you have, drag it down in your folder to make a prefab. Delete it from the scene. On the spawn point it will ask for a prefab. Now drag your new prefab on. So let's try hit play and see what happens. Okay, a lot of them are spawning. And that's of course because our time between we need to bump that up. Let's say 5. And let's go to our controller and the background speed, set it to 20 as well, and game speed to 10 in my case. So let's hit play and see what happens. So you can see here to the left we have an enemy. It's spawning up there now, and I should see it here in a second. And I'm not. Why not? Is that due to? Sorry for that. That was because my spawn point here was not in 0. So remember to have it on the correct layer. And I will bump my background speed a bit more up and the game speed as well. So now hit play. And here you go. Now you have your enemies. And nothing happens right now. So now let's make the obstacle kill the players. So let's create a new C# script and call this enemy. Take your prefab and drag it onto your prefab and open it up in Visual Studio. And in here we will need a private game object that will be our reference to our player. And from the start we will say player is equal to game object dot find object with tag, and here we are looking for the player. And then we need an on trigger into 2D, and if our collision dot tag is equal to border, then destroy this dot game object. So if it hits one of the borders we made from the top, bottom, or behind the player, then it will be destroyed. Else if collision dot tag is equal to player, then we will destroy uh, player.gameObject, like this. So let's save it and get back to Unity. The compile, and remember all the borders we have here. We need a tag for that, so let's tag and make a border tag. Again, highlight all of them, take tag and border, hit play, and let's see what happens. So if I hit this one, nothing happens. And why is that? That is because we don't have a box collider on it, and of course it needs to be triggered as well. So let's try again. Hit play and let's see. So when I hit it now, game over. And we of course forgot to add the retry button. Let's take the canvas, go to the exit, go to the reset level. Here we have the button. Remember to assign the controller, game controller, restart. And again, let me bump up the speed here for the game so it goes faster, like this. And now when I hit it, game stops, and try again, it will reload everything. And if you can see the obstacle here is going past me, it hit the border here in the back, it should die, but it does not. Sorry for that. Our obstacle of course need a rigid body as well, and remember to freeze the rotation. So now when we hit the play button, it will bummer. Sorry, of course need the gravity scale as well. Let's hit play again. So now we should avoid it, and when it hits back here, it disappears. So now it's simply just let's stay alive, and game over, try again. So the last thing that we'll need in this tutorial, sorry, it's getting a bit long, that is the particle effect that we created here. So let's place it here in the start of the map. We will have the looping on. We will pre-warm it so it will start before the game actually. The start lifetime, let's make it between 2 points, 5 and 8. The start speed, let's make it between 2 points, 2 and 5. You can of course always adjust this so it fits your game. The start size, let's make it 0.3. We will have a color, let's make random between 2 colors. Let's make this green and a lighter green, like or something like this. We will need the scale with the body 1000. That's all good. We need emission and rate over time. Let's set it to 20. We will have the shape. Our shape should be a cone. Let's add the radius to 25. We have the radius thickness, the arc, random, 0, base. We need the position and rotation. We have the renderer down here. Sorry, we need texture first. Let's take texture sheet, and here we will say, turn it on. We will have sprite, And here I made this particle effect. It's just a eye drop. Let's add that, and everything should be fine. We need the y to be minus 90. So you can see here now it's starting. Let's add it here. Let's bump this up a bit, like let's take 50 and 40, something like that. And now when you hit the play button and start the game, you can see you have all these small particles in the background. You can of course make them fly faster by bumping up these speeds. So you have some little effect in the background. Yeah, that was what I had to show in this tutorial. Sorry for this long video. I really hope that this helped you to make an endless runner game. Again, thanks a lot for watching, and if you want to see more videos from me, please hit the like and subscribe button below. Thank you, and see you next time.